Good evening. It is 7 o'clock and we are ready to get started. First of all, give yourselves a round of applause for such a good crowd tonight. I want to thank each and every one of you for coming. Hold on just a second. Make sure this mic gets turned on. Can everybody hear me okay? Good deal. I want to thank each and every one of you for coming out tonight. We had a great showing for the 47th House District debate in Raynell on Tuesday night, and another great showing tonight. This is proof that the Republican Party is engaged, and that's what we have to be. We have a lot of important decisions in front of us, a lot of prayerful decisions in front of us, and on that note, I'm going to ask former Delegate Barry Bruce if you would lead us in prayer to open the night.
Thank you, Ken. Father God, we come to you tonight and we ask for your wisdom and discernment in all that we do. We pray for the candidates here tonight. We pray for our state. We pray for our country. Lord, we ask that you would just rule over everything. Be with us tonight. Bless this time together. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen. Thank you. Appreciate you. I'm going to go in order before we start and acknowledge the candidates and the elected officials who are here tonight in the audience. And this is just from my eyesight. If I'm wrong, please call me out. Starting from the back. Ryan Blake, candidate for Circuit Judge. Christine Stump, candidate for Family Court Judge. Mike Honecker's not a candidate or an elected official, but he is the Inspector General of Homeland Security for the state of West Virginia. Kelly Kemp is a candidate for Family Court Judge. Let's see here. Boogie Ambler is a candidate for 47th House District. Barry Bruce is a former delegate, House of Delegates, West Virginia. Tammy Shiflett-Tincher is our current county commissioner and a candidate for re-election. Ray Canterbury is a candidate for 47th House District. Nicole Graybill Campbell is a candidate for prosecuting attorney running unopposed. Jamie Baker is our circuit clerk in Greenbrier County. Patrick Vying is our current prosecuting attorney and he is running for circuit judge in Greenbrier County. And Vincent Scott Deeds is our current state senator. Also in the back is Nick Daly, our newly appointed county commissioner for the Central District. Also want to thank, and another candidate just came in, is Grady Ford, a candidate for Family Court Judge. I want to thank Real WV, a fairly new news media outlet here in the Greenbrier Valley, for covering this event tonight. Appreciate you all being here. And thank you to everybody watching on Facebook tonight. This is proof that the Republican Party is ready, not just for this primary, but to go on to this general election and come out in record numbers. For one purpose: we're going to put Donald Trump back in the White House. Amen? He's going to carry all of us down ballot as well. And we are so excited as a Republican Party for this to be a presidential year. So tonight, let me go over the ground rules real quick. Each candidate will have 4 minutes as an opening statement, give a little bit of background on themselves and tell us why they are running for office, why they are running for House of Delegates for the state of West Virginia in the 46th District. Beyond that, we have a boatload of audience-submitted questions, much like Tuesday night in Raynell. I will go through each one. Please don't be offended if I modify it slightly to make sure that it is a strictly nonpartisan question. Cannot be a question that is directed at one individual candidate. It has to be for everybody to be able to answer. So your question will be asked, but it may be modified. I would like to try to get everybody out of here by 8:30, or at least that be the goal for the evening. and we will go from there. Let me introduce the candidates this evening. Starting in alphabetical order, current delegate, Jeffrey Scott Campbell. You all may clap for each one. Challenger, Trey Robert Ewing. And another challenger, Thomas Edward Perkins. Once again, a very exciting moment for our Republican Party that we have so many qualified candidates running for office. And so I want you all to please take the time to listen, and after tonight, take the time to pray about what you heard tonight. At this time, once again, in alphabetical order, I will give each candidate 4 minutes to give an opening statement, introducing themselves and why they are running for this position, starting with Jeff Campbell. I'll give the mic over, we will pass it around, and go from there. Thank you.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Good evening. I'm Jeff Campbell, the incumbent in District 46 of the West Virginia House of Delegates. I grew up here in White Sulphur Springs, less than a mile away off Tuckahoe Road. I attended White Sulphur Elementary and White Sulphur Junior High in this building. I played football and basketball for the Green Devils, and 40 years ago, when this room was the gym, I scored my career high of 12 points against the Rennie Tigers. I worked several jobs while growing up here in White Sulphur. I stocked shelves and bagged groceries next door at Kroger. I caddied at the Greenbrier. I worked for Homer Ware at Tasty Freeze, where 50 East was and Gustard's Bistro is now. I washed cars and limos for Don and Bobby Hoffman at the taxi stand up the street, and I worked for Kenny Bryant when WSLW radio was across from Old Mill Park. I graduated from Greenbrier East High School. I have degrees from Concord University in communications and in education. I've been employed as a social studies teacher at Eastern Greenbrier Middle School for 15 years, and I've worked for Greenbrier County Schools since 2001. When I was teaching special education and social studies at Greenbrier East. I've also worked for Radio Greenbrier for 39 years. Governor Jim Justice appointed me to the House on September 13, 2023 to fill Delegate Mike Honecker's unexpired term. I have 4 years of experience in the legislature where I served from 2017 to 2020. I currently serve on 4 committees: Economic Development and Tourism, Technology and Infrastructure, Veterans and Homeland Security, and Artificial Intelligence. I'm pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, pro-faith and family, pro-economic growth and jobs, and pro-common sense. I'm honored to be endorsed by more than 30 elected officials and organizations, including Senator Ben Steeds, Sheriff Bruce Sloan, former Senator Kenny Mann, the National Rifle Association, the West Virginia Citizens Defense League, the West Virginia Farm Bureau, the West Virginia Coal Association, the West Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the West Virginia Business and Industry Council, West Virginia Bankers Association, the West Virginia Sheriffs and Deputy Sheriffs Association, and many more. I have the experience, work ethic, and relationships to get things done in Charleston. I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Alphabetical order, Mr. Ewing would be next.
Well, thank you all for coming out tonight. It is important to hear about all the candidates and to be involved in the community. I think I pretty much know at least 90% of the room already personally, but if you don't know me and what I'm involved in, I was the former vice chairman of the County Republican Party here, still on the executive committee. I'm elected to the State Republican Executive Committee for the Tennessee Senate District. I'm the treasurer of the West Virginia Federation of Young Republicans at the moment, and my big thing at the end of the day is I'm a Christian. I'm on the board of directors of the Greenbrier Pregnancy Center, which if you don't know what that is, I highly recommend you please look into that. It's a great new organization that I'm thankful to be able to be a part of. I support Christian values, biblical values. It's been what I stood on the whole time I've campaigned. I'm pro-life. I support school choice. Big reason why I wanted to run is because I see what's happening in the schools. Of course, I am younger. I think it's obvious. And I see what they're doing to the children here in the schools, what they're teaching. And if I'm elected, I'd like to be a part of helping to put us right on the right track, putting the Bible back in schools and working to really teach the values that we all share instead of the values that are being pushed on us from Washington, D.C. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of issues, and I know we'll all be addressed tonight, but I believe the answer to pretty much everything's the gospel. I think that's really the only solution you're going to find anything. I'm thankful for all the endorsements I've received. Former Delegate Barry Bruce here tonight, Delegate Todd Longenaker, Derek Evans, candidate for Congress. West Virginia's Right to Life identified me as the only pro-life candidate, only candidate with record of being pro-life. I'm endorsed by the West Virginia Freedom Caucus, the West Virginia Republican Assemblies, West Virginia Federation of Young Republicans, the Republican Party of Summers County is the only conservative candidate, and many, many more. My website's Trey Ewing for West Virginia. You can look at all of them and see more about everything I support. But I wanted to talk about why I decided to run. Like I said, I'm fully pro-life. I'm thankful to be involved in a lot of pro-life organizations, the pro-life movement. And at the end of the day, I want to say this as respectfully as possible. Current candidate right now, Jeff Campbell, he's not pro-life. Has a record of voting for taxpayer-funded abortion. His direct quote on that is, whenever he was in there, I voted no on the SJR 12 because it's a women's health issue. Abortions will continue whether legal or not, and everyone deserves access to the best health care, even if they're on Medicaid. I think abortion always ends the death of someone, and I would never support abortion, allowing it to happen, and especially not allowing it to happen on taxpayer-funded dollars. I just can't support that. Also, our schools. What I see, what they're doing to our children with the transgender stuff, and I know that means a lot to a lot of people here tonight. I just can't get behind that either. Again, I highly respect your service, Jeff, but we disagree on that. You've mentioned in 2021, after you were outside of the House at that point.
3 minutes.
Yeah.
Go ahead, 1 more minute.
You had said we got a lot of accidents like that of the session on issues like gender issues, sexual proclivities, and guns. You said that people that are interested in stopping men from playing on women's sports, and you call them transgender women, row women. You said that you think those people are exactly where you think that they think 1955 is exactly where we need to be. I'm one of those people. I disagree with you completely, and if you think that's where we need, you think that's what we think, then that's where I'm at. And I highly respect you again, but I just don't agree with you. And that's why I'm running. And ultimately, it's up to you all. It's your all's decision. It's Republican primary. Y'all are the voters, and whatever party we'll have, it's up to you all. It'll be the party of biblical values and conservatism, or something else. It's up to the voters, and that's why I want to be here tonight and answer. Thank you.
Mr. Perkins, one more note just before we move on. Just so everybody knows, if a candidate is mentioned in any format by another candidate, then that candidate will be afforded an additional minute to respond. After all these opening statements are over, the fact these are opening statements, that will not apply for this. But for the rest of the night, any candidate that mentions another candidate, that other candidate will get us an additional 60 seconds to respond. And because it was mentioned in opening statements, Mr. Campbell will receive an additional minute in closing statements. Thank you. Mr. Perkins, you have 4 minutes.
So I'd like to start off by saying,
Just get it real close.
thank you. I'd like to start off by saying to everybody this evening that I'd like to thank the Greenbrier GOP for hosting this evening's forum and the Real West Virginia for being here and covering all this event. But with that being said, my name is Thomas Perkins. I'm currently running for District 46 of the West Virginia House of Delegates, which represents eastern Greenbrier and southern Pocahontas counties. I'm running for juvenile justice reform. As a child, I was in the state's custody, and I experienced abuse and neglect. I believe that children are better suited being with their families than being in the state's custody. Right now, what we have going on in our state is an epidemic. Many children that are taken from their families are put inside of these juvenile treatment centers, which serve as controlled pharmaceutical testing facilities. Most of the kids are doped and drugged, and then when they turn 18, they're basically kicked out of these facilities to be left on their own. And what does the state do? It seals the juvenile records. The biggest lie that the state of West Virginia tells the public is that we seal juvenile records to protect the interest of the child. The reason the state of West Virginia seals the juvenile records is so the state can protect itself to prevent the children from pursuing lawsuits against the state of West Virginia. So this is something that has to be addressed by the state of West Virginia, because when a child turns 18, the child should be able to go to the courts and say, I want my juvenile records. And then it should be up to the child to decide what they want to do with those records, not the state to just destroy it. So this is something that needs to be worked on. But as far as that goes, I'm pro-life, I'm pro-Second Amendment. I stand for many things. We can go on about my positions and views on a variety of subjects, but just this past legislative sessions, one of the things that the legislator voted to do was to pass a bill, great bill, well-intended bill, that bans smoking inside of vehicles with children. The question is, do you really want the government regulating each and every single aspect of your life? I mean, it's your business on whether or not you smoke in a car with your children. You know, that is up to you as a parent. When the government steps in and says, and wants to try and regulate that, that's a problem. Because what does that really do? How are we going to enforce that? And this is what the legislator never discussed or even debated. What happens is we're going to make it a secondary offense of a $25 fine, right? Get caught smoking in a vehicle with your kids. But then what happens? What happens is, let's say if the parent's under investigation by CPS. Well, now that's child endangerment. That's just a reason for the courts to come in and take your kids from you, because you've endangered your child by smoking in a vehicle with them. So the question that I have for people really is, do we need a legislator that's going to pass a law for absolutely everything and tell us what we can and cannot do with our lives? Or should we basically, do some of these bills that's like, you know, maybe that's a good idea, or maybe we should say, that's too much government. I'm a Trump supporter. And one of the things that I love about Donald Trump is when he ran for president back in 2016, he said, for every new regulation that we pass, we're going to repeal 2 old regulations. One of the things that I believe in here in West Virginia is for that every new law that we pass, we should repeal 2 old laws. We should be downsizing the size of the state government, not expanding it and making it larger. So with that being said, my name's Thomas Perkins. I'm running for District 46, and my campaign's website is thomasperkinswv.com. Thank you.
We have several questions to sort through tonight. Once again, the rules are each candidate receives 2 minutes each. One more time to reiterate, if another candidate is mentioned in that response, that candidate will receive 1 minute to respond. Let's start. This will be randomized through the night of who gets to start each question. Starting with Mr. Campbell tonight. Are you, and once again, these are audience questions. Are you aware of the Greenbrier County Health Department's needle program, needle exchange program? Do you support that program? Why? If not, why? Are you aware of the Greenbrier County Health Department's needle exchange program? Do you support that program? Starting with Mr. Campbell.
Actually, I'm not real familiar with that program. I know that Charleston has had a program like that in the past that has had some successes and had some failures. I'd like to learn more about the program here locally before I could take a real hard position on that. But I know it's worked in some places, and some other places it has not.
Why you lie, Mr. Perkins?
No, I'm not familiar with the Greenbrier County Health Department's needle exchange program. I know they do them out west in places and stuff. And the thing with needle exchange programs is this. A lot of people associate needle exchange programs with drugs. And the reality of the matter is there's a lot of people, seniors, you know, who actually are, let's say, diabetics that use needles. You know, when grandma has to decide, do I actually go and buy groceries or do I buy my needles? She's going to buy her groceries. And in many cases, what ultimately happens is she'll end up going home, take her insulin and stuff with dirty needles, get an infection, and then she's hospitalized with an infection. And, you know, that's sad. So the question is, should we have needle exchange programs? Needle exchange, a box of needles is essentially $100. A hospitalization for 2 weeks is $14,000. I mean, what do you want to pay for? And, you know, the fact is, if we're going to do needle exchanges, we need to make sure that it's a multi-step program. So it's not just, okay, we're going to exchange needles and let drug addicts continue to just go out here and shoot up, but we're going to make sure that we're recognizing people who are addicted to the drugs so that way we can get them into treatment and get them the help that they actually need. But in my opinion, the reason I believe needle exchange programs work is because needles have no value, right? The dirty needle does not have a value. So if someone goes to a public park and they shoot up and they'll just throw the needle down and walk away. And what does that mean? If you go there for children, I got 3 kids at home. My kids could pick that needle up, prick themselves, kill themselves right there in a public park, and that's not something we need. So by having a needle exchange program, drug addicts will actually value that needle because they know they can take that dirty needle back and get a clean needle in return, and that keeps our parks and stuff free of dirty needles, and it makes the public safer.
Thank you. Mr. Ewing.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the specific program that's been mentioned, but I do know overall needle exchange programs are something I generally support. I don't think we should enable that kind of behavior because at the end of the day, they're the victims. We should be helping them, not enabling them, furthering what's hurting them. If somebody's addicted to drugs, we shouldn't just give them needles and send them on their way. We should help them, have programs for them, and be there for them. And at the end of the day, it goes back to what I've said in my opening statement. The answer to it is the gospel. These people, they can only be changed by that. It's the only thing that can change people. But overall, for that specific program, without knowing the specifics of it, I can't answer really in detail, but generally that's my view on needle exchange programs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Once again, in the line that we will be editing these questions in a way that each candidate can fairly answer them. West Virginia is 1,495 miles from the southern border. What can West Virginia do in of itself? And what can the legislature do? What would you support the West Virginia legislature do to cramp down and aid in our border crisis in the United States of America, where we have millions of unvetted illegals taking up our resources and being potential enemies? Starting with Mr. Perkins, and then to Mr. Campbell, then to Mr. Ewing.
Well, securing our borders needs to be a top priority. When you have millions of illegal immigrants flooding into this country, a lot of them are actually serving as drug mules. So the problem is, people say, well, the cartel, they pay this fee to the cartels, but really, the cartels are just asking them to bring packets of drugs across the border and smuggle them all across the country. And, that's why we can't, solve this drug epidemic that we're currently dealing with, because the drugs are just flowing everywhere that the immigrants flow. So the question really, which is what the moderator asked, is how do we go about dealing with this? In the past, the legislator has proposed that we send millions of dollars down to the southern border to help our allies. But really, we pay taxpayer money to the federal government. And the question is, should we just stop sending tax revenue to the federal government? And I'm wondering if that would actually get their attentions, because if West Virginia would just stop sending the money to Washington, maybe Washington would get the message that they need to do something at our southern borders.
Mr. Campbell.
I absolutely support more border security. Build the wall, I totally agree, because the world is a different place than it used to be. September the 11th, 2001 changed everything. Okay, our terrorists that came to this country years ago and performed a terrible attack on our nation, they came across on planes. Now they're coming across, they can come across the border from the north and the south. Don't think they can't come across from Canada as well. I know the governor had sent National Guard troops down to the border for assistance there a while back, and I think that's a great idea. Did it cost some money? Yes, but at what cost is national security to us as a nation? So absolutely support anything we can do to help secure the wall. Secure the border and build the wall.
Mr. Ewing.
Yeah, thank you. This is another great question because it's a very important issue. I fully support building the wall, and from the state level, I fully support giving some money to that if we can afford it here at the state level. I fully support the National Guard as well, and at the same time, I think that we need to start sending these people back that aren't supposed to be here. We need, legal immigration is great. It's good, but these people, if they've come here illegally, they've broken the law, and they're here illegally, we're likely to do things that we don't want them doing anyway. They're also illegal. And we need to work on sending them back. And I'll be honest with you, another reason I decided to run is because of my disagreements with some of the ways that I know that Delegate Campbell has addressed that issue before in the past. And whenever he was in the House of Delegates, a bill came up to send money to support Trump's border wall and building it. His comment on it was, regardless of your position on President Trump's border wall, I think most will agree that West Virginia cannot afford to send one dime when so many issues remain within our state's borders. I'm glad to see that you changed your mind on that now, and I appreciate that. I hope that we all can continue to see why this is a big issue and why we need to work to do something, because these people are hurting people. They're sending drugs. And as we know, our West Virginia, this county, and all over the county has a lot of problems. We need to do what we can. Thank you.
Mr. Campbell is afforded a 1-minute response.
Delegate Caleb Hanna in 2019 made national news when he proposed sending $10 million to Donald Trump to be able to support border security. The blowback in this state from Democrats and Republicans was just outrageous, because we had such a financial crisis in this state at that time. $10 million was worth so much more to our state coffers back then. Now we're having all these budget surpluses where we do have more money to be able to afford it. Back in January 2019, we did not.
Mr. Perkins. Would you like me to repeat the question?
He was responding. He
was given his 1 minute. Mr. Ewing took his 2 minutes. Mr. Campbell was given 1 minute to respond after he initially started the question, correct? You have to start with Mr. Ewing. In this case, we'll go to you and then Mr. Campbell again to finish that question.
Started with the first one. Question, border security with Trey.
Just a second. You're right. I have a C, a P, and an E. And he is correct about that. So that started with Thomas, and then went to Trey, then went to Campbell, and then going on to another question. See, this is what happens when we're born with blonde hair. It doesn't show as much, but I appreciate being called out on that. Thank you for that. Thank you very much on that. We're now going to start with a question for Mr. Ewing. And that is, what is your stand on term limits in the state of West Virginia and for the House of Delegates?
I fully support term limits. Absolutely. I endorsed my former delegate Todd Longenacre. In a lot of ways, I wish we could keep him up there. He'd run again, but sign the term limit pledge, and I fully intend to do the same thing. I don't want to be in there for any really amount of time, because I'm not going up there for myself. I'm going up there to serve the community if you have me. Don't want to go up there and make friends and make a lot of money. I want to go up there and you'll send me and do what's right. As for staying up there forever, I don't support that at all. I fully support term limits and spending whatever time you'll keep me up there, but I won't run more than maybe twice, I'd say. I think that's the same thing Longenacre did. So thank you.
Mr. Perkins? Yes.
Yes, I support term limits. I'm actually a big supporter for the Convention of States, if you all are familiar with what that is. As far as term limits go in Washington, the United States House, it should have term limit of like 2 years, 4-year pieces. U.S. Senate, 2 terms, 6 years, and then U.S. Supreme Court should be capped at, I think, about 20 years or so. But on a state level, one of the big things that come up recently was, term limits for the West Virginia House of Delegates. Should we have 4-year terms or should we have 2-year terms? In the case of, Mike Honaker resigning from West Virginia House of Delegates, if we had 4-year terms, then, Mr. Campbell here would have essentially a 3-year term without, the voters having a say in the matter. And is that what people really want? So if we're going to do term limits, one of the things that we have to first kind of look at in the legislature is the appointment process. I think there's some reforms that need to be there on how candidates are actually appointed to office as part of getting, term limits put in place. But I mean, as far as serving in the West Virginia House of Delegates, I mean, I'm thinking like 8 years for a delegate, 8 years for state senate, or 12 years maybe, which would be 2 terms of 6 years, and then all the official offices should be capped at something along the lines of like 8 years or so, because we can't just continuously have people sit in office for years on end and not do nothing, and it's just too much politics overall. Thank you.
Mr. Campbell.
Okay, before I start on my answer, I'm going to somewhat respond, not critically of what he just said, but had Delegate Honaker had a 4-year term, elected in November 2022, then when he resigned in August, September of 2023, there would have been an election in 2024 to fill the unexpired term for the last 2 years under that scenario. So it wouldn't have been the completion of the roughly 3-year term. It would have been coming up now in this election to fill the unexpired term. Term limits. If I am fortunate enough to get elected here, I promise you I will not serve more than 4 to 6 years total. I'm not looking for this thing long term at all. I really am not. In terms of looking back over when I was appointed in September, when I served 2017 to 2020, first thing I did was get on the website, took a look at the current House membership. I was gone for 3 years. There were only 40 members still there. So there's a lot of turnover. We have term limits. They're called elections. They're held every 2 years. I think it is good to have some people there with obviously institutional knowledge. It's always good to have that, obviously. You have too much turnover and there could be too much chaos. But overall, term limits, I think, are a good thing, but the voters do decide those every 2 years.
Starting with Mr. Campbell on this one, and this has become a hot button issue in our state. Title IX has been pushed to unbelievable measures. Currently, there is a potential that males could play on girls' sports teams, use their restrooms, locker rooms, and personal spaces. Currently, girls in West Virginia whom boycotted playing with a male on their track team have been banned from future competitions. This, I believe, occurred not long ago in Harrison County in our state just this past week. If elected, what is your current position to protect women and girls of West Virginia from males playing in their sport? Starting with Mr. Campbell.
I've been around high school athletics since 1984, and we have boys sports, we have girls sports. I'm absolutely against a biological male participating in girls athletics. It's not right, and it should not be allowed to happen. And as legislation comes through our state legislature in the House and in the Senate, I will absolutely vote no to allow boys to participate with girls in girls sports. I promise. Thank you.
Mr. Perkins.
When it comes to boys and girls sports, boys do not need to be playing girls sports. Their genetics are completely different than of girls, and ultimately it gives them an unfair advantage. So it's not right. It's not fair to the young ladies that are fighting hard and training hard and working hard to try to get scholarships to go to college, only to have a transgender boy to essentially basically steal that scholarship from them. So it's not fair. It's not right. And as far as I'm concerned, we need to ban boys from being in girls sports.
Mr. Ewing.
Yeah, thank you. Like I said, it's really one of the reasons I decided to run. I see stuff like this, and I want to do anything I can about it if you'll have me. I just there's obviously only two genders, and you can't change it. You can't go from being a man to a woman, and that's the way it is. Anybody that thinks that they are, we need to help them, but we can't give in and hurt other people, because it is a sensitive issue. But at the end of the day, there's only two genders, and we should not allow men to play in women's sports. And like I said, this is one of the reasons I decided to run. I truly hope you've changed your opinion on that, Jeff. But of course, right after you were defeated in 2020, you commented that you believe transgender women are real women, and that
I don't remember ever saying it.
well, I had your quote.
Let Mr. Ewing finish.
Republicans passed a new priority to ban transgender women and girls from competing on women's teams in middle school, high school, and college sports. And then you followed it up with saying that anyone focused on gender issues is stuck in 1955. I truly hope that you change your opinion on that. I don't know if you have. You're going to have to answer for that, not just to the people here, but to God. But I truly have changed. But as for me, I've always stayed right where I am. I believe there's only two genders. I believe that we could absolutely defend that and keep that out of our schools. Thank you.
Mr. Campbell is afforded 1 minute.
I have absolutely no recollection of that whatsoever, but I do believe that what you believe, that God created two genders, male and female. And that's what I stand by, and that's how my votes will be in the West Virginia legislature.
Thank you. Moving now to Mr. Perkins. Do you support or oppose the Hope Scholarship in West Virginia? Why or why not, Mr. Perkins?
Well, I haven't spent a lot of time researching the Hope Scholarship, but when it comes to education, this is my take. We are abandoning our public school system. We're basically taking kids, trying to put them into charter schools, and most families can't afford it. Typically the families that are middle class or upper class get their kids into charter schools while the rest of our kids get thrown under the bus, and that's not right. And we need to make sure that kids get a proper education, they learn all the different subject matter. One of the biggest things that hurt me in school was when you transition from elementary school to middle school. I never learned how to write cursive in elementary school. They took that away. And when I got into middle school, half of the kids in my class were failing, and the teacher asked me, why wasn't I doing my work? And I was like, I can't read your writing. I don't know what you're putting up on the board. And the teacher started printing everything, and everybody in that classroom's grades went up. They started making A's. And it's because we have basically forgotten very basic, simple education, and we've just thrown it down the drain. That's why kids are failing in our schools. And what we have to do is we got to make sure that kids get quality education. We have access to homeschooling and other important things. But as far as trying to get and put all this money into charter schools and private schools and the Hope Scholarship and all this stuff, I don't think it's a solution. I think we need to fix the public school system that's broken.
Mr. Campbell. 2 minutes, Hope Scholarship.
In terms of the Hope Scholarship, I'll be honest with you, I voted no on that in the past. And the reason I voted no on that is because, our public schools, it's our community. I went to school here in this building, okay? 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, I was a White Sulphur Green Devil. And back then, this community really rallied around this school. And, with consolidation in 1992, a lot of that changed with a place where I teach now at Eastern Greenbrier Middle School. I wish we could go back to where we were and having all of our community, at least our junior highs. We've had our high school all my life since 1968 when Greenbrier East was formed. Here's the thing about the Hope Scholarship. Not every kid who has these are able to, let me back up, I'm sorry. Private schools do not have to accept every student. They don't. They can pick and choose who they want. Also with Hope Scholarship, I think those monies, if used, should stay in state. Absolutely should stay in state. I'm not opposed to the Hope Scholarship completely, but I think to build, as Mr. Perkins said, stronger communities, I think our public school system needs to thrive because it will help our community thrive.
Mr. Ewing.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad a lot of these questions about education, like I said, it's one of my
Thank you. Starting with Mr. Ewing. Would you be willing to support stricter animal cruelty laws in West Virginia? Stricter animal cruelty laws. Mr. Ewing.
Absolutely. We shouldn't be hurting any animals in a way that's wrong like that. I don't really understand why anybody would hurt an animal for their own enjoyment, and we shouldn't allow that. It doesn't make sense. I think that everybody generally would agree with that. Torturing an animal for your enjoyment or being cruel to it, don't imagine why anybody would do that. Or why we should allow it. Thank you.
Mr. Perkins.
Well, animal cruelty is sad, and abusing an animal is not something that anybody should ever do. We had the incident not too long ago where somebody just decided to shoot somebody's miniature horses on the side of the road, and it's sad when something like that happens. But as far as making our animal cruelty laws stricter, I would want to actually look at the West Virginia Code first to see what the current code says before trying to change that legislation to implement harsher punishments. Thank you.
Mr. Campbell.
Absolutely support legislation that would make it a crime to, inflict pain and suffering on any animal. I don't know who would be in favor of doing anything like that. That would be, terrible. Think about your own pet. Think about your dog or your cat at home. That would just be horrible. I've got a cat that I took in several years ago because it came home one night in the middle of the winter. It was on my front porch. Came to it and took off running. Came back the next night, it was still back on the front porch sitting in the chair. Eventually, brought some food out for the cat and some milk. Started to kind of let me pet it and things like that. That cat lives in my house now, and it's been there for about 9 years. So animal cruelty, I think I know where this question came from, and I absolutely would support legislation to make it a crime to just do anything to animals that would be inhumane.
Once again, these are questions audience submitted. Starting with Mr. Campbell, who do you support for President of the United States?
I support Donald Trump for President of the United States, absolutely, and look forward to voting for him in the primary on May 14th.
Mr. Perkins.
I support Donald Trump. I voted for him in the 2016, Republican primary, and voted for him in the general, and voted for him again and again. So hopefully I'm going to vote for him again this primary.
Mr. Ewing.
I fully support Donald Trump as well. I've campaigned for him in 2020. I campaigned for him, I'm sure. Now I think I have been, after I think about it, in this primary. But yeah, absolutely support him. I'm glad to hear as well that Jeff changed his mind on that in 2016. He said, "I trust Hillary Clinton more than Trump. Trump scares me. A third Clinton term would be good for America." He also, with January 6th, he said that he supports the prosecution of Donald Trump over January 6th. I'm glad to hear that you changed your mind on that. I know you ran in the same ballot with Joe Biden in 2020, but I'm glad to hear you changed your mind. Thank you.
Mr. Campbell has 1 minute to respond.
One thing that turned me around on Donald Trump was Joe Biden's presidency. Absolutely. That's the truth. I am voting for Donald Trump, and any of you guys can come in and watch me. I might early vote next week. Come in and watch me. Okay? I'll take a picture if they'll let me. I'm voting for Donald Trump for president, and I will vote for Donald Trump in November.
Okay. Another hot button issue. With the overturning of Roe v. Wade last year, the question is, what is each candidate's level of comfort with West Virginia's current abortion standards? Current abortion standards. Are you comfortable where they are, or are you willing to shift them in one direction or another? Mr. Ewing had the last question. Mr. Perkins had the question before that. Excuse me. And Mr. Campbell had the last question. Mr. Ewing and Mr. Perkins. So we're going back now to Mr. Perkins. Question is, are you comfortable with West Virginia's current abortion standards?
Yes, I support West Virginia's current abortion laws. I think they're good. I've always been a supporter and believer of heartbeat legislation, which is abortion should be illegal after 6 weeks. But what we have on the books right now, I'm in favor of that and stuff. And if there needs to be changes or anything like that made to our state's abortion laws, I'll work with West Virginia for Life, great organization. So that's who I'll work with to make any kind of changes if necessary. But my biggest concern when it comes to abortion, and this is one of the big debates and arguments right now in Charleston, is contraception. Right now some groups are trying to say that women's birth control is an abortion drug, and they're pushing to ban that. I believe that women have a right to contraception, and that's something that I will fight to defend. Thank you.
Mr. Ewing.
Yeah, sure. Obviously, I'm fully pro-life. I support making our laws as strict as possible because abortion is murder. That's just what it is. It's the truth. So I fully support making our laws more strict in the sense of preventing as many abortions as possible. There's some issues right now. Of course, I'm on the board of the pregnancy center, so I'm somewhat more informed. There are some issues right now with trying to make sure that there's pills out there that people can take. Trying to make sure that people are aware of the dangers of that and banning them. So there's a lot of issues there. We're going to keep working. I'm thankful to be endorsed by West Virginians for Life as the only pro-life candidate they've identified. Again, I know I heard Jeff at the beginning say he's pro-life now. I appreciate that. I truly hope you've changed. And I truly hope that people take into consideration that you seem to change your mind a lot. So thank you.
I can say one thing. Mr. Campbell is given 3 minutes.
In 2018, in the state legislature, we had SJR 12, which was for Medicaid funding of abortion. I voted no on it because there was a Senate amendment that would have allowed for exceptions for rape, incest, life and health of the mother. Those were shot down in the Senate. Those were not part of the Senate Joint Resolution 12, which was for Medicaid funding of abortion. Okay? That's the only reason that I voted no on that. Had those standards been put in place, I would have voted yes to support that legislation, which was the constitutional amendment back in 2018. Ben, you asked about the current standard. The current standard is 15 weeks. And guess what? It does contain the exceptions that I wish had been in there in 2018 to allow for protections for life and health of the mother, victims of rape and reported rape victims, and incest victims as well. So had that been in place in 2018, I would have voted yes for SJR 12. That's the only reason I voted no.
If I may say, you 3 gentlemen are taking a lot shorter time to answer questions than 3 gentlemen the other night, who I love very dearly. This is a bit of a complicated question, so I'm going to try to read this carefully. I will repeat it if necessary. So you 3, can you please tell us what you plan to do to decrease the reimbursement disparity between Medicaid, Medicare patients, so patients with Medicaid benefits can have increased access to health care in West Virginia, starting with Mr. Ewing? You need me to repeat that question? I completely understand that is a little bit more complicated.
Yeah, well, thank you for the question. I'll admit I'm not as up to, information-wise on Medicaid and Medicare, because it is a very specific issue, however, I'm amazed what it is. I think that Medicare, we definitely should be, people that paid into that, Social Security. The older people, they certainly be helped with health care. I know, big issue. As for the reimbursement disparity that was mentioned, I'm not informed enough to really speak to it. I'd like to know more about it, but I've never heard of that issue. So whoever asked that question, please get with me after. I'd really like to know about it, because it is a very specific issue, and most people, it needs to be brought to a larger audience. It's thank you.
Mr. Perkins.
Medicaid, Medicare, a lot of this stuff's federal, so it's really hard to, do things on the state level other than try to offer some kind of maybe subsidies. I know cost of living's going up, our seniors are hurting really bad, and that's not good. My father, he's a cancer patient. My grandmother's currently in a nursing home, and one of the things that I think a lot of families struggle with, just to get your loved ones into a nursing home is you've got to liquidate the assets. And if they don't have their affairs already in order, such as power of attorney, you got to go through the courts, you got to get a guardianship, you got to get a conservatorship. It is a long, drawn-out process that's very complicated. And it's just one of the things that there needs to be some tweaks on. I spoke to one of our current senators, Jack Woodrum, about this matter, and he's had similar problems and situations and stuff. But there needs to be some work or something there. Just some of these programs and stuff, because as inflation goes up, people, there's a cap there at how much money you're allowed to have, and that cap really needs to be raised. But the only people who can do that is really the federal government.
Thank you. That is a very tricky question dealing with Medicare and Medicaid, and I know the state is, they've split up DHHR into 3 separate divisions. I think that's a good start to start addressing some of the concerns and some of the issues that take place there with that. But like Trey said, that's a very complicated question. So whoever asked that, I'd like to learn more about that when we're finished here tonight. So thank you.
Starting with Mr. Campbell again, it's kind of a broad question, but obviously one of the greatest issues that faces our state is the drug problem. There's been a lot of effort by our House of Delegates and our state senate and our governor to try to address this issue. What can further be done, and what specific legislation, according to this question, what specific legislation will you support to improve the drug problem in the state of West Virginia, starting with Mr. Campbell?
Thank you. Well, first thing we can do is pass Senator Vince Deeds' bill that they've had the last 2 years in the state senate, and they can't get it through, that would make it tougher on the drug dealers here in our state. That's where you start. You got to get tough on crime. And to do that, you have to make drug dealers know that coming to West Virginia is not going to be a free ride. You have to take care of our kids. We have to make sure that our parents are drug-free. We've got a foster care crisis in this state that is a major part of that is the drug problem that we have here in West Virginia. So to be able to solve this problem, or at least to start a big dent in it, is run Vince Deeds' bill and get it passed for strengthening the penalties against drug dealers, and keep the people from Detroit, the drug dealers, in Michigan, not in West Virginia.
Mr. Perkins.
Well, the way you're going to fix the drug epidemic and a lot of the drug problems is to have rehabilitation, and question.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I will research quality. That's okay. This is fast and furious, I completely understand. So the drug problem in the state of West Virginia, what specific legislation would you support to aid the drug epidemic in our state?
All right, so with the drug epidemic, there's a lot of things that we can do. Making people felons and locking them up in jail has not worked over the past 50 years, and I don't think it's going to work moving forward. We have to have a new approach. And one of the things that we've had here in West Virginia that's been very successful is the drug courts, which has done a lot of great work. And as Mr. Campbell pointed out a moment ago, we've got problems with the foster care system. Well, a lot of that has to do with CPS coming in, families that are addicted to drugs, removing the children from their home and putting them in the foster care. So one of the things that the legislature have done, I think, in the past 2 years is they created a new program, which is currently in like Raleigh County and a couple other counties, but we don't have it in Greenbrier, and that's called the Family Treatment Courts. And that's something that I would like to try to fast pace a little bit, because one of the things is how do you actually use that program moving forward? And it seems like the issue with that program is lack of mediators. So getting grant funds in place so that way law firms or other groups can actually mediate the family treatment courts and move those programs forward is one solution. But the biggest crime that we have right here taking place in Greenbrier County now is drug trafficking. And most of that is marijuana, because the state of Virginia just recently legalized recreational marijuana. So what I would like to do, one of the bills that I'll probably end up introducing is a marijuana decriminalization bill that would still make marijuana illegal in West Virginia, but it would only be punishable as a secondary offense and by a $50 fine. And that way, people are not trafficking drugs, because if somebody comes into West Virginia and they get caught with possession of pot, because what people are doing now is they're driving from Greenbrier County, going over to Allegheny County, Virginia, getting marijuana, coming back and smoking it, and then if they get stopped, they go to jail and they're charged with a felony. And that's not what we need to be doing, is put people in jail for just minor things such as pot. What we need to do is go after the drug dealers, the ones dealing cocaine, heroin, and all these other harder crimes, and then we put those people in jail versus putting people in jail for just minor offenses.
Mr. Ewing?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, at the end of the day, there's two groups in that problem. There's the dealers and then there's the victims that are being taken advantage of there. We need to go after the dealers harder. We need to put them in prison. What they're doing to the families and what they're doing to the people is very wrong. We can't allow that. We need to fund our law enforcement, fund all of our first responders, firefighters deal with a lot of that as well. Paramedics, obviously. And then for the victim, I mean, we need to be there to fund programs to support them. I like didn't run it before I'm on board the pregnancy center. One of the things the legislature is doing is they're giving money to the pregnancy centers organization. I think similar thing needs to be done. It's not being done already. We need to fund these private organizations that are charities that are looking to help these people get them rehabilitated. We need to be there for them. We can't just ignore it. We can't act like it's going to fix itself. We need to step up and we need to share the gospel with them. We need to help them and make sure these programs are there for them, because they need it, and we need to put the dealers in prison that are taking advantage of it. Thank you.
At this time, you have to remind me how Mr. Perkins mentioned you. How did you mention Mr. Campbell, Mr. Perkins?
Foster care, yeah.
Was it regarding vote? Was it regarding his voting record? At this time, we need to move on. We have several questions, and I think it's best to only have a response if it is in response to the actual voting record or if there's a direct attack.
And it wasn't anything critical.
Thank you.
Just to build upon something that he brought up that I was thinking about.
And that's why
We'll talk about it later.
yes, exactly. We need to move on because we have an important question here. And this is probably the basis of why we're here. I love this question. I appreciate whoever asked this. What does it mean to be a conservative, and why can you demonstrate? How can you demonstrate to us that you are a conservative? Starting with, in this case, Mr. Perkins. What does it mean to be a conservative? How can you demonstrate to us that you are a conservative?
Well, some people probably won't like my style, but I'm one of those like more trigger happy kind of guys. When I first registered to vote back when I was 18, I registered as a libertarian. And one of the things that I learned about the Libertarian Party was the party is highly divided on the issue of abortion. Half the party's pro-choice, the other half's pro-life. And I decided, you know what, I'm pro-life. I support the life of the unborn. I support the Second Amendment. I support personal liberties, freedoms, among other things. And ultimately, that's one of the reasons I became a Republican, is because one of my mentors, just listening to, was back in, I think it was 2008, was a presidential candidate and Congressman Ron Paul. You know, he introduced me to this notion and ideal of liberty, which is something that I'd never really heard before, or really anybody talk about. And today, you know, his son, Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, is currently running for U.S. Senate. Who's also endorsed, you know, Alex Mooney for U.S. Senate here in West Virginia. So there's a lot of liberty that's being done. And, you know, for me as a child, you know, I was in the state's custody. You know, my rights were infringed upon. And the thing for me that's important is fighting juvenile justice reform, fighting against tyranny. And I truly believe that what the Democrats want, and that is socialism. That is locking you up, throwing you in prison without due process. That is not what the Republican Party stands for. We are the party of law and order. We are the party of due process, and that's why I'm a Republican.
Campbell.
I was a Democrat. I registered in July of 1987 to vote. And when I became a member of the House of Delegates back in November of 2017, you know, when you're there, and Delegate Antler sitting on the front row, and he'll tell you this too. You know, when you're there, you see legislation come before you that really can shake your ideology. It can change your ideology. I remember we had a bill back in I think in 2019 or 2020, that would allow the Bible to be taught as an elective in grades 9 through 12. I saw no problem with that. None at all. It's an elective. It wasn't a required class. I voted yes on it. I was criticized harshly by members of the Democratic Party for that vote. I thought it made common sense. How can I walk in Bethesda Church every Sunday morning at 9 o'clock and have people look at me and say, he voted to not allow the Bible to be taught as an elective in school. Couldn't do it. So I voted in favor of that bill. And, you know, just other bills like that kind of shaped my ideology. And changed me, because once you're on the clock, once you're there, and you got to hit red or green, as Delegate Antler and Delegate Canterbury knows, Delegate Honecker and others, you're on the clock. You have to make a decision, and you have to do what's right. You know, the Democratic Party is just not the same party that it used to be. Back when I registered to vote years ago, and I know there are other people in this room that used to be a Democrat, okay? But the party itself is not the same party that it used to be. West Virginia was a very conservative Democratic state, probably the most conservative Democrat state. And as things changed in Washington over time, that just kind of trickled downhill and made its way into West Virginia. I used to say there's a difference between a West Virginia Democrat and a Washington Democrat. Can't say that now. It's not the same as it used to be. West Virginia was a conservative, moderate, Democratic state years ago. I'm a Republican. I carry a flag, and I've got one. I'll show you a picture of it.
Thank you. Mr. Ewing.
Yeah, thank you. I think I'll just let my record on that speak for itself. As for, you know, if I'm a conservative and what that means, I mean, I follow the Republican Party's platform because I believe it. I'm a Christian, support pro-life. I mean, I let my record speak for myself on multiple boards. It's been an honor to be elected to serve you all in the State Executive Committee for the 10th Senate District. I mean, there really isn't much more to say than that, because like I said earlier, I've already done most of you all through my service in that. And as for our address, you know, I'm running against Jeff Campbell. I'm glad he has switched parties, and I truly believe you have changed your views on a lot of that. But up until the day you switched, you served on the State Democratic Executive Committee. the exact opposite of what I'm on right now. Again, I really hope you changed, but I highly respect your service as well, but just disagree with you on some of these important issues. Thank you.
Mr. Campbell, 1 minute.
Trey, I like you too. Yeah, I was on the county executive committee, I was on the state executive committee, and, I absolutely own that. I was on it, but again, when we had some votes on the state executive committee too that really, made me realize what my ideology was and how much the Democratic Party had changed. It's not the same party it was even 10 years ago. It's totally different. They're pushing things, the Democratic Party in the state used to be a party that supported the working class people, blue collar workers, okay? It does not push those same beliefs anymore. All you gotta do is just look around. Thank you.
Gosh, they're really getting a workout at moving that microphone around, aren't they? Their arms are going to be really tired in the morning. Talking about the Second Amendment. What makes you the best candidate to represent our values on the Second Amendment? Last question was for Mr. Campbell first. The question before that was for Mr. Perkins. This will start with Mr. Ewing. Why are you the best candidate to represent us on Second Amendment issues?
Yeah, thank you. I fully support the Second Amendment. I mean, it says right there in the Constitution that it shall not be infringed, and it's there both for hunting, for self-protection, protects against even the government. It's not sort of like the government we have right now in D.C. I fully support. I'm honored to have an A from the NRA and A from the Citizens Defense League, and I'd be happy to answer any specific questions on a lot of specific issues in the Second Amendment. If anybody has any, please get with me afterwards. Otherwise, I'd like to, another quote from you, Jeff. Again, I respect you, but the truth, you said in 2021, right before you switched parties, free speech does have certain restrictions, so why can't the Second Amendment have them too? Republicans want Democrats to compromise on health care, but Republicans compromise on gun control. And then can we finally have a real debate on gun control? Again, you'll have to answer for the voters on why you thought that at the time. I hope you again have changed your mind on this. Thank you.
Give it to Mr. Perkins, 2 minutes. Mr. Campbell will have 3.
Thank you. So I'm pro-gun. I grew up around firearms. My dad was an outdoorsman and hunter. My grandfather was an outdoorsman and hunter. And I think a lot of families here in West Virginia, grew up around hunters and sportsmen and going out and stuff, fishing and everything. And for me, I grew up around guns. I support the Second Amendment. I support the right to bear arms, the right to self-defense. There are some things that I oppose. I'm not a fan of the public having access to fully automatic weapons, which is why we have an automatic weapons ban nationally. I support the right to defend your personal property with deadly force. A lot of people don't like that position. Here in West Virginia, think about the southern border. Think about people flooding into this country. We got illegal immigrants flooding all over West Virginia right now. And what's going to stop somebody from coming to your home, attacking you in your front yard, and you defend yourself, and then, well, guess what? They run armed and they say, well, you shot them, and you go to jail for that. Someone's on your property, threatening you and your family, you got the right to shoot them. And that's not a popular position. Some people say that that's an extreme position. That's an extreme view. But I do support the right to self-defense and the right to defend property. And, I will fight for the Second Amendment. I'll defend the Second Amendment. There are some places I do believe that guns don't belong. West Virginia Citizens Defense League, they would like to see constitutional carry or capital carry, if you will. They want to allow people to carry guns in the state capitol, and I don't think that we need guns in the capitol when the legislature is in session. You got somebody who's upset or angry, emotions running high. We really need people in the state capitol building, especially up in the gallery, with guns. What I visualize when I think of guns in the gallery at the state capitol building is you're basically shooting fish in a barrel. A couple guys come in, they just start shooting into the legislators, and that's not something that we need. So some things that's been proposed, I'm against. But as far as your right to bear arms and defend yourself, I fully support it.
2 minutes, way to go. Mr. Campbell.
I am proud to be endorsed by both the National Rifle Association and the West Virginia Citizens Defense League. I have a A rating from both organizations. Okay? It's good to have conversations about different things from time to time, always. And Mr. Perkins brought up the fact about capital carry. I'm going to support capital carry. If it comes to the floor, I will support capital carry, and this is why. If we're going to allow campus carry, then we should lead by example in the legislature and allow capital carry. Okay? When we're in the House chamber in session, there are 100 delegates in there. We are protected by state police and by Capitol Police. If we're going to vote to have guns on these college campuses the way we have now, it's developing right now, why not lead by example? Let's have capital carry to get into the Capitol. 20 years ago, you could just walk into Capitol. Now you got to go through metal detectors and Capitol Police and do that. If we're going to make guns more accessible to the public, we as a legislature must lead by example, okay? I am proud to have the endorsement of both the National Rifle Association and the Citizens Defense League with that A rating. And the reason I got those endorsements is because of my voting record on gun rights.
For perspective, the other night with our 3 questions, we got through 11 questions. We're going to get through over 20 tonight. Pretty cool. Pretty important question here as well. What is, and we're going to have 2 questions in a row here on education. What is the rationale for not supporting charter schools? Seeing that West Virginia public school system ranks near the bottom in this nation, do you think that throwing more money at a failure system makes sense? Basically, to dumb this down, are you in support of or opposed to charter schools in the state of West Virginia? Pardon me while I go back to make sure we're all being fair here. That would start with Mr. Campbell.
I have voted no on charter schools in the past, and the reason why, because I think we need to invest our money into public schools. As I said moments ago on another question here tonight, I grew up in this community. I had gym class and played basketball right here where you guys are sitting right now. White Sulphur Junior High was such a big part of this community, and to have a stronger community, you see around the state and around the nation, when communities lose their schools, the community suffers. And I can remember for years, I'm picking on my friend here, Delegate Amber on the front row, who for years I would see him show up at a Greenbrier football game with an Alderson Indians hat on. And because that's his school, he graduated from Alderson. And with charter schools and things like that, listen, if we invest the money in our public schools that we need to invest, then why can't we have the greatest education system in the world, right here in the United States and specifically in West Virginia?
Mr. Perkins.
Well, I think I already answered this question a few moments ago, but I guess I get to answer it again. We have to fix our public school systems. Our public school systems are broken. And, charter school systems, I support free markets. So I'm not going to say that we should not allow for charter schools, because if people want to set up a private school, that's their choice as part of free market enterprise. But, the question is, how do you fund, about state funding to a charter school? And really, it's like, how much money do we give to each child in public school? So if you take your child and say, I'm going to put them in a charter school, that's how much money should follow that child to that charter school. So that's how charter schools are funded. And if parents want special programs or something for their kids to learn, then more money can be invested that way. But here's what I'm thinking. Think about our local hospital, Greenbrier Valley Medical Center. You've got Greenbrier Valley Physicians next door. That is essentially like an apartment building. It's rental spaces for different doctors and physicians. I would like to see something like that built at our public schools, where you actually have private classrooms that could be leased. And then, basically, if parents want their children to, let's say, learn about religion at a public school where you have a chapel or something there, you could actually have a class for that parents could enroll in, their kids in, and that class, you would have to actually pay for it to put your children into that class. So kind of a hybrid model between public schools and charter schools at a public school. And I think it would be interesting to have a conversation on that.
Mr. Ewing.
Thanks for the question again. I fully support charter schools. I think it's very obvious from my record and everything I stand for. I really couldn't support it more. Anything to improve our education, especially offer a Christian education to our children here in the state. I fully support that. And, I don't know why anybody else wouldn't. I know there's the argument of we're banning the public schools, but I believe that's just a manipulative language from Democrats that are trying to just use triggering terms to try to use emotions. But whenever you look at the facts, we need to be supporting our children. We need to be offering charter schools. It's very obvious. Thank you.
2 minutes. What is the best way to keep our students and our young people in the state of West Virginia and making sure that they do not become our greatest export, starting with Mr. Ewing?
Yeah, thank you. Of course, I am younger myself. I plan on staying here, but the big thing is our economy. We need to be competitive. We need to cut some of these taxes that we really aren't taking in already too much money anyway. We don't need to take in more than what we're spending. And at the end of the day, because back to the last question, I don't trust the government to do much anyway, so we really need to look at cutting government load. We need to cut regulations. We need to make sure that jobs are available by cutting taxes, which will increase, the ability for businesses to invest and boost our economy. People here offering jobs, offering opportunity, and it really isn't hard. We just have to do it. Thank you.
Mr. Perkins.
Well, the way you're going to keep people here in West Virginia is very simple: economic development. We have to invest in infrastructure. We got to invest in broadband. We've been talking about broadband for years, and still yet we don't have broadband. We talk about a record surplus, and what do? We take the record surplus, we refund it to the taxpayers, but the reason the taxpayer pays taxes to begin with is they want critical infrastructure here, so that way, we have reliable electricity, we have internet access. Every business, just about in Greenbrier County today, relies on internet. If you're a senior, you've got medicine, the doctor punches it in on his computer, sends that prescription in over the internet to your pharmacy. That's how you get your medicine. And if we don't have reliable broadband, you don't have access to get your medicine filled. That's a problem. Young people are leaving because they can't compete. The internet's not here for that. I think the FCC just recently raised the standard for broadband on what qualifies as broadband. Essentially, Greenbrier County, I don't think even has broadband as of right now. It was just completely erased when they changed the rules because the standards changed. We have ancient internet equivalent to that of dial-up from back in the early 90s. And when I ran for state senate 2 years ago, one of the things that I did bring up was I believe that the future of West Virginia's economy is going to be in telemarketing. We can have call centers here which would make us competitive against other states. Think about California, $20 an hour minimum wage. West Virginia, our minimum wage is like $8. You're telling me we can't be competitive? We could pretty much outbid anybody. Look, the problem is we've got to get a living wage here in the state. That's why the young people are leaving. We don't have a living wage. They can't survive. You live paycheck to paycheck. You never get a hit. You can't make ends meet. You can't support a family. I got 3 kids, and I'm struggling to get by. So, the question is, do I want to stay here in West Virginia, or do I want to leave? And, frankly, I decided to put my roots down in West Virginia because we have wonderful people that live in this community. We have great values. And I want to get my kids in the church here in the next few years. They're still too little, but we have a lot of important things.
Thank you. Mr. Campbell.
2 things: economic development and education. I'm on the Economic Development and Tourism Committee in the House of Delegates, and I know that over the last several years we've had a lot of exciting projects come to the state. The only problem for our area is those projects have been in the northern part of the state for the most part. They've been kind of right down the Ohio River. We need more investment here in southern West Virginia. Also, from an education standpoint, you know, we need to have more, we need to go back to the days when I went to school here, and right out back was the shop class. We need to have more vocational programs and get those back in our middle schools. We've got some in high schools now, but you know, really in our middle schools, we don't have vocational programs like we used to. And get back to a shop class, a home ec class, just something to kind of introduce kids to some of the vocational programs and offerings that we had, you know, for many of us, I'm looking around the room when we were growing up here in West Virginia. To do that, you know, you find out today that so many people can make a living being a plumber or a welder or an electrician. Not everyone has to go to college to have a successful life here in West Virginia. So the two things there to keep our people here, economic development and education.
We're running short on time, so we're going to have rapid fire. Each candidate gets 1 minute on the following 3 questions. Campus Cary, West Virginia, yes or no, and why? Starting with Mr. Perkins.
Sexual assault is probably one of the biggest crimes on college campuses. And honestly, young women need to be able to defend themselves, so I fully support Campus Cary.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes, I do support it, and you know, some parts of the state where the culture is a little bit different makes more sense to have it than maybe some other parts of the state. But overall, as Mr. Perkins mentioned, with sexual assaults on the rise, absolutely do support Campus Cary. As long there should be some safety measures there as well.
Mr. Ewing.
Yeah, absolutely, I support it. I let my record speak on a lot of these issues, and you do that. Most of y'all know who I am. So absolutely, I know Jeff, you didn't vote for it the first time whenever you were out there, and you highly criticized Republicans at the time. But you truly have switched, changed your mind again. Thank you.
Yes. A minute.
Okay, I voted no on Campus Cary for one reason alone. There was an $11 million fiscal note attached to that bill that was not covered in the budget. And I was not going to be responsible for increasing tuition on our students across the state, including you, Trey, as a college student, to make you have to pay more to go to college just because the safety parameters were not put in and paid for in the budget back when that bill came up. That is the only reason that I voted no on Campus Cary. Had that $11 million fiscal note been covered in the budget, would have voted yes, yes, and yes.
Current minimum wage, state of West Virginia, yes or no? Keep it as is or no? 1 minute.
Well, and what we see in California right now with the cost of minimum wage there and the rising cost of a hamburger at a fast food place, that stuff's just going to continue to go up all the time as minimum wage continues to go up. Right now, let's keep it where it is and reevaluate it every year.
Mr. Perkins.
Minimum wage is really too low. Anytime you raise wages, as Mr. Campbell pointed out, it impacts everything from the cost of food, groceries, everything goes up. But the problem is, like with California, where you have these, let's say, satellite television providers, DirecTV, Dish Network, a lot of people around here rely on that because they don't have access to cable television. And what happens is when minimum wage goes up in California, they raise those subscription prices, which directly impacts West Virginia. Our minimum wage might not be going up, but the minimum wage in California does impact West Virginia. So yes, I would be in favor of possibly raising our minimum wage slowly over time, not just a big jump.
Mr. Ewing.
No, I don't support raising the minimum wage for any reason. It's just not how economics works. Nobody's going to make any more money, prices will just increase, and really I think it's a ridiculous Democrat talk that plays off emotions. So no, I never support raising the minimum wage.
Keep the microphone. Form Energy, the $300 million investment by the state of West Virginia, approved by both houses and the governor. Form Energy, would you have voted for it and why? 1 minute. Trey Ewing.
No, I wouldn't have voted for Form Energy. I think it was a waste of money. I think it was unfair. I think that we just shouldn't have taxed that money and instead let business owners currently in the state reinvest it. I don't support either the people that were involved in it in the sense of I know Bill Gates was involved and people like that. So generally, no, I wouldn't vote for it. Thank you.
Mr. Perkins.
Form Energy is just another form of corporate welfare. We're going to give $300 million to a private out-of-state corporation, while still yet we've got companies like Allegheny Wood Products here locally going belly up and laying off hundreds of workers. I mean, imagine if we would have just took a small portion of that $300 million, invested in some of our small businesses here across West Virginia. I mean, that would have been a hell of a lot better. We would have had, economic growth. But we've got to do more to help our small businesses. I'm a small business owner. A lot of our small businesses are hurting, and every year, we get new businesses, but we got tons of businesses continuing to leave the state of West Virginia. They're not staying here because they can't afford to do business.
Mr. Campbell.
Had I been a member of the legislature at that time, I would have joined Delegate Mike Honaker and voted yes on Form Energy because West Virginia needs jobs. We're talking about our young people leaving the state. We need jobs. That's how you get jobs, right there. And accepting Form Energy would be, accepting that Form package was the right thing to do because we need jobs here in West Virginia.
Final question before closing statements. Mr. Perkins, and this is my question. How do we, beyond May 14th, stay united as a Republican Party? We have bickering in our supermajority. How do we ensure that we keep that supermajority and stay united as a Republican Party? Mr. Perkins, you have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you for the question. The way we stay united is we stop listening to he said, she said, and you hear the argument straight from the horse's mouth. We got 2 news agencies here today, Greenbrier Journal and the Real West Virginia. Real West Virginia is live streaming this forum. Voters need to hear directly from the candidates and the representatives, and for the ones that's already in office, look at their record. Look at who's being honest. That's how we unite. If you got people sitting there lying, don't listen to them. Look at the records, check the facts, and the way we unite moving forward is through honesty. I truly do believe that.
Mr. Campbell, 2 minutes.
Right now in the House of Delegates, we have 89 Republicans, a super majority. And with that many, and also you look over in the state Senate, 31 of the 34 are Republicans. Obviously, when you have that many, it's hard to herd cats, as they say. So, there's a lot of different opinions, a lot of different philosophies and things like that. Moving forward, if I do not find myself successful here, I will promise you I will endorse whoever the nominee is for our party. That's how we build the Republican Party here in West Virginia moving forward.
Mr. Ewing.
Yeah, thank you. I've been involved in the actual leadership of the party. At the end of the day, we need to do everything we can to get along. There are some differences, though, whenever you get people that don't support everything. And the platform, you've seen that with Doug Scaff. I guess everybody's familiar with that. Former leader, House leader of the Democrat Party, switches specifically to run for office. Sometimes you do have to do stuff there, but generally, real Republicans, I'm endorsed by the Freedom Caucus. Not everybody would join that in the House. I would have elected, but we still have to get along. But we do need to stand on what is right. We can't compromise. We know that, like the Bible is true. Nothing's going to change that. We can't compromise on issues like that. But overall, we need to get along best we can and work to hopefully promote what's right in our state, get the right people elected, stand for what's true. Thank you.
As we go into the closing statements, to carry off with what Mr. Ewing said, please, for the love of God, do not vote for Doug Scaff.
Yeah.
Please do not vote for Doug Scaff. He is a liberal. He does not need to be our Secretary of State. Going into closing statements, that was Ben Anderson's little diatribe there. Each of you will have 2 minutes, and going in, once again, order of alphabetical order. Let's go backwards this time, because we went frontwards the first time. Let's go backwards this time, starting with Mr. Perkins, a 2-minute closing statement.
Well, thank you. And as Ben said, say no to Doug Staff. That's not who we need in the Secretary of State's office. But anyways, this has been a productive evening. And I just want to say that I am pro-life, pro-gun, pro-family. And as your representative, my job is going to be to represent you, the people of this district. Not to represent the people of California, not to represent the people of Washington, not to represent people in Morgantown or Beckley, but the people who live within the 46th district. That is who I'm representing as your representative. And as your representative, I want to work with people in this community. I want to be active. If you got a problem and I can work with you to help you, that's what I want. And as Ben points out, it is getting hot in here. But with that being said, my name is Thomas Perkins. My campaign's website is thomasperkinswv.com, and I would appreciate your support. Thank you.
Trey, 2 minutes.
So thank you. I mean, it's been an honor to serve you all on the state executive committee. If you have me for this, I'll do it. I'm the only conservative runner that's been identified that, but multiple groups, multiple former delegates, and even the Republican Party of Summers County, which if you're involved, you know how much that is for the actual Republican Party to come out in the primary and endorse it. But ultimately, I am the only conservative running that. Not just me saying that. You can go look at my website and see the people to do. And I fully respect Jeff Campbell. I don't mean anything bad by what I've done here. Read your quotes, and they are all available online at Jeff Campbell WV if you want to see his record. But it's why I'm running. I don't agree with you on a lot of that stuff. I'm a conservative, I'm a Christian. I know you received a failing grade from CPAC, similar to Doug Scatt. Actually, I received the same score. But appreciate your vote if you agree with me. Ultimately, it's up to you, all the voters. You decide what our party is, what we support. Again, I stand for biblical values. Christian, I'm conservative, stand with Donald Trump, and I appreciate your vote if you give it to me, because going up there to serve you, I don't particularly, not looking to it for myself, but if you want me to serve you, I'll do it. Thank you.
We're 3 minutes.
Appreciate you guys being out here tonight. I appreciate Mr. Perkins, Mr. Ewing for being here. I've enjoyed this. And Mr. Anderson, thank you for moderating. I've served 4 years in the legislature, in the House of Delegates, worked every day. I show up for work every day. I've never missed a floor session. My mother passed away on February 13th, 2019. Guess what? Took off, left out of the nursing home in Fairleigh, went straight back to Charleston. We had an 11-hour floor session that day. Didn't miss one vote. I take the job seriously. I want to represent you, and right here we're in my hometown, White Sulphur, where I grew up, and a lot of memories being back here. And if I am fortunate enough to get through this primary election, I'm going to seek out the advice of the other two candidates here on the stage tonight. And I'm serious about that, because that's how we build a stronger coalition here for our Greenbrier Valley and Eastern Greenbrier County and Southern Pocahontas County moving forward. My name's Jeff Campbell. Look for me online, electjeffcampbell.com. Thank you all for being here tonight.
I'll only take a minute. I want you all to know how hard this is, being in the majority. Because everybody on this stage tonight, I would say, did a very good job. Everybody on the stage on Tuesday night for the 47th district did a very good job. We have a lot of very good candidates in our local Republican Party. And I'm so blessed to say that we have made that happen by building a strong Republican Party. I'm so thankful for that. The only thing I can possibly ask of each of you is pray in earnest, because this is not an easy decision. These are good people. We have good people in our Republican Party who feel called by God to serve. And we need to discern, and we need God's help in doing that. Only thing I could possibly ask of each of you is pray, pray, pray. Pray for your fellow voters. Pray for your fellow Republican voters, that we can make the best decision for our community. We're on the comeback trail, and with God's help, we can continue on that route. I made a promise, and I will afford 60 seconds, and then we will close. Dr. Bridget Morrison has asked to clarify regarding the earlier vaccine question. I'm going to give you 60 seconds to clarify about that, since that was kind of a little bit of a confusing question. And I'm going to give you the microphone for 60 seconds.
So it actually wasn't about vaccines, it was about the needle exchange. And so
Yes.
I am the health officer for Greenbrier and Monroe County, and we've had a needle exchange for a bigger part of the harm reduction in Greenbrier County since 2018. Harm reduction is part, yes, we do have needle exchange one-to-one. But the bigger piece of this is that in addition to trying to get people clean and trying to get them into rehab, it's also about getting people to limit the spread of infectious disease. Many of you don't know that West Virginia is leading the nation in new acute hepatitis C and HIV cases. Why? Because of IV drug use. And so part of harm reduction is to limit the spread, limit these, get clean needles to people. One-to-one, they can't come in and give you 10 and get 40 in return. But also what happens is it cleans the community. There's not the stray needles that are around that there used to be. And guess what? If you call and find one, we'll come and pick it up. We'll come and pick it up. We have so many things to talk about with harm reduction, and I would be more than happy to come to any of your meetings or anything to talk about it, because 60 seconds is not nearly enough, but I can tell you. Please come and talk to me. Thank
I
you.
love you. Dr. Morrison has been a great Republican leader in our community, and I greatly appreciate her. And at this time, I'm going to ask Senator Vince Deeds, in the loudest voice you can, to close us in prayer.
Let's pray. Our gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this time that you've given us this evening to look to you for guidance and direction. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the candidates that have come forward, that have presented themselves, and they've given answers. Help us as the voting public, with godly wisdom and discernment, to examine their answers. And more importantly, help us ask those hard questions to the candidates after we disperse. Heavenly Father, we need your direction. This year, this election process is so important, not only to our state and local communities, but to our country and where we stand at in this world. And Heavenly Father, as long as we stand upon your principles, your guidance and your truths that come from the Word of God, if we do that, and we vote whenever we go to vote at the ballot box, and we vote by obeying you, all things will be possible and all things will be just fine. So help us do that. Help us enjoy the fellowship that we have with each other, and help us celebrate Jesus Christ in everything that we do. For it's in Jesus' precious name we do pray. Amen.
One last round of applause for our candidates. Have a good night. And thank you to the Schoolhouse Hotel for affording us this great venue.